cold CEO found a single mom feeding her baby in the rain. Then everything changed. The rain over Ravenhill City fell hard and cold, drumming against the windshields of cars crawling through the industrial district. The streetlights flickered against puddles that shimmered like broken glass. In the back seat of a black sedan, a paper bag from a charity gala slid as the car turned. A small chamois blanket, a new baby bottle, and a box of biscuits wrapped in a ribbon that read "Energy for Families." Elias Dorne hadn't planned to attend that event, but as CEO of Dorne Tech, showing up was part of his job. Now, close to midnight, he just wanted to get home, away from the empty speeches and the forced smiles. His phone buzzed with messages unread. He ignored them, eyes on the road ahead, the wipers swiping back and forth in a steady, tired rhythm. At the intersection near the old bus terminal, a movement caught his eye, a faint shape under a leaking awning. He might have ignored it, if not for the sound that followed, faint even through the rain. A baby crying. Elias slowed the car, leaning slightly forward. A young woman sat on the wet concrete, back pressed to the wall, her coat pulled tight around a small bundle in her arms. The baby whimpered, shivering under the thin fabric. She held up an old plastic bottle and tried to coax him to drink. The rain kept blowing sideways, soaking her hair and sleeves. Her lips were pale. For a moment, Elias hesitated, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel. He told himself this wasn't his concern, but something in that image, a mother trying to feed her child in the cold, hit a place he thought had long gone numb. His mother had died in a storm like this one, years ago, because a faulty wire in a factory she worked at had never been repaired. He still remembered her hands, calloused, cracked, still trying to fix things until the end. He couldn't drive away. He pulled to the curb, turned on his hazard lights, and reached for the umbrella beside him. As he stepped into the rain, the cold hit instantly, seeping through his suit. He approached slowly. "Ma'am," he said over the wind, "you can't stay out here." The woman looked up sharply. Her eyes were wary, tired. "We're fine," she murmured, holding the baby closer. "Just waiting for the bus." "There are no buses after 11, he said gently. "You'll catch pneumonia." She shook her head. "We'll manage. Please, just go." The baby coughed then, a dry, choking sound that made her freeze. Elias knelt slightly, opening the umbrella over them both. Rain slid off the fabric, forming a small circle of light in the darkness. "Here," he said, pulling the new baby bottle from the charity bag. "It's clean. It'll stay warm longer." "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because he's cold," Elias replied simply. The woman hesitated, then accepted it with trembling fingers. She poured the milk she had left into the new bottle, testing the temperature on her wrist. The baby latched and began to drink. Relief washed over her face, mixed with exhaustion. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Clara," she said. "Clara Wynn." "And your son?" "Noah." Elias looked at the flickering sign of the Riverside Motel across the street. "There's a place open there," he said. "It's safer than this." "I can't afford a room." "You don't have to, just for tonight." She bit her lip, torn between pride and desperation. Then she nodded once, too tired to argue. Elias held the umbrella while she lifted the baby. They crossed the street, their shoes splashing through puddles. The motel clerk barely looked up when Elias handed him his card. "Room 12, the man mumbled. Inside, the air smelled faintly of detergent and damp carpet. Elias placed the blanket from the charity bag on the bed and handed Clara the key. "There's heat," he said. "Keep him warm. The rain's not stopping anytime soon." She looked up at him, uncertain. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to," he said. "Just make sure he's okay." Clara hesitated, then whispered, "Thank you." Elias nodded once and stepped out. The rain had softened to a steady patter. When he glanced back through the glass door, she was standing by the window, holding her baby close, framed by the dim yellow light. He got into his car, turned on the engine, and stared at the road ahead. The image wouldn't leave him. Her arms around the child, the way she tried to hide her shaking. He adjusted the rearview mirror. In its reflection, she was still there, a small figure in the glow of the motel sign, unmoving under the hum of rain. He didn't know why it mattered, only that it did. For the rest of the drive, he didn't turn the radio back on. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the city still looked washed out, dull under a pale gray sky. Elias hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the woman from last night. The way she had stood in the yellow glow of the motel sign, holding her child like he was the only thing keeping her upright. He told himself he had done enough. He had given her warmth, shelter, and a chance to rest. There was no reason to think about it anymore. Yet as he drove to the Dorntech headquarters, the same question kept circling in his head. What happened to her afterward? At noon, between meetings, he quietly called the Riverside Motel, pretending to confirm a charity transaction. The clerk told him room 12 had been vacated early that morning. The guest left before sunrise. She hadn't left a name, only a short note folded on the counter. Elias asked what it said. The man read it aloud, his voice bored. "Thank you for the kindness. I don't want to owe anyone." Elias ended the call, leaned back in his chair, and stared at the ceiling. The note shouldn't have mattered, but somehow it did. 3 days later, he drove to Dorntech's East Plant, a massive glass-walled complex on the edge of the industrial district. It was supposed to be a routine inspection. The air smelled of metal and detergent, the corridors echoing with the low hum of machinery. As Elias walked down the hallway, talking with the operations manager, something made him slow. Through the glass partition, he saw a woman in a faded blue uniform, bent over a mop bucket. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun, a few damp strands sticking to her neck. The way she moved, careful, precise, quiet, felt strangely familiar. She turned, and for a second their eyes met. It was her, Clara, the same woman from the rain. She froze too, startled, then looked down quickly, pretending to adjust her gloves. The little boy from that night, Noah, was asleep in a small makeshift crib near the guard station, wrapped in the same blanket Elias had left. Elias didn't say anything. He only watched as she gently checked the baby's forehead before returning to her work. The manager beside him kept talking about quarterly output, oblivious. Elias answered in short words, his attention divided. As they moved on, he couldn't shake the feeling that fate was playing tricks on him. That night, Clara finished her shift late. The building emptied floor by floor until only the hum of machines remained. She wheeled her cart through the silent corridors, wiping down the glass doors, humming softly under her breath to keep herself awake. She had taken the janitorial job through a temporary agency. Night shifts only, no benefits, but steady enough to cover rent and Noah's medicine. The irony stung. The company logo printed on every door she cleaned was Dorntech. She had no idea the man from that rainy night was the same person whose name was engraved on the building. When the security lights dimmed to half brightness, she checked on Noah one more time. He slept soundly on a folded blanket, cheeks warm again, his small hand clutching the edge of the chamois cloth Elias had given. She smiled faintly, then kept mopping. In his office upstairs, Elias reviewed reports long after everyone had gone home. The smell of cleaning solution drifted faintly through the vents. It wasn't unpleasant. It smelled like lemons and rain. He realized the glass on his desk was spotless, though he didn't remember asking anyone to clean it. He found himself watching the security feed out of idle habit. On the small screen, Clara moved through the hallway, wiping surfaces, adjusting chairs, never lingering. There was something disciplined about her, almost methodical. No wasted motion, no shortcuts. For a long while, he simply watched. When he turned off the monitor, it was close to midnight. He gathered his things and stepped into the corridor. As he waited for the elevator, he heard footsteps. the soft squeak of rubber soles against the polished floor. Clara appeared around the corner, pushing her cart. She stopped abruptly, startled. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quickly, stepping aside. Her voice was polite, but her eyes flickered with recognition. Elias nodded once, unsure what to say. "It's fine," he replied. The elevator doors opened, but neither of them moved. For a moment, they stood facing each other in the quiet hallway, the sound of distant machines filling the space between them. "Good night, Mr.—" she began, then hesitated, realizing she didn't know his name. "Elias," he said, almost without thinking. She blinked, surprised. "Good night, Elias." He stepped into the elevator, and the doors closed slowly. As the lift descended, he caught one last glimpse of her reflection in the mirrored wall. Her head bowed, mop in hand, a faint, tired smile on her face. That night, Elias drove home in silence again, the same way he had a few nights ago. But this time, the city didn't feel as cold. By the following week, the East Plant had settled back into its usual rhythm. Machines humming, forklifts moving along yellow-marked lanes, and the faint metallic echo that never quite left the air. Clara had adjusted to the night shifts, even if her body hadn't. She arrived every evening just before 8. Noah bundled in a small blanket. The security guard, a kind older man named Vince, let her set up a temporary cot in the corner of the guard station, where the boy could sleep while she worked. She kept him quiet, fed him between breaks, and prayed each night that no one from management would notice. But luck never lasted long. One Friday night, halfway through her shift, the heavy doors to the corridor swung open. The floor supervisor, Mr. Rollins, strode in, clipboard under one arm. He stopped when he saw the child sleeping in the corner, his brows knitting immediately. "What is this?" His voice carried across the room. Clara froze. "Sir, he's asleep. I only brought him because I couldn't find a sitter tonight. He stays here, he's safe." "Safe?" Rollins barked. "This is a restricted facility. You know the rules. No unauthorized personnel, especially not children. What if there's an accident? Liability alone." "Please, I understand," Clara interrupted, clutching her gloves. "I didn't have another option. If I missed tonight, I'd lose the job." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before bringing a baby into a factory," he snapped. "Pack up your things. I'll report this to HR first thing in the morning." Her throat tightened. "Sir, please don't. I'll take him home right now." "You'll never—" But Rollins raised a hand, cutting her off. "Enough! You're finished here." The sound of footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. Both turned. Elias had entered the hallway, still in his dark coat from an earlier inspection. He stopped when he saw the scene. The supervisor standing rigid, Clara trembling near her cart, the child curled up under the flickering light. "What's going on?" His tone was calm but sharp. Rollins straightened immediately. "Sir, this employee violated safety protocols. She brought a child into the building." Elias looked at Clara, then at the sleeping boy. "Is that true?" Clara's voice was barely audible. "Yes, I didn't mean to break any rule. The sitter canceled last minute. If I skipped another shift, they'd replace me. I needed one night to get through." For a moment, the only sound was the buzz of overhead lights. Elias's jaw tightened. He looked at Rollins. "And your solution is to fire her?" "It's procedure, sir. The company can't risk—" "The company," Elias interrupted quietly, "exists because people like her work through nights like this. Because mothers like her choose to show up, even when the world gives them no choice." Rollins blinked, unsure if he was being rebuked or tested. Elias stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "The rule stays," he said evenly. "Children can't be near the production floor, but that doesn't mean the mother loses her job." He turned to Clara. "From now on, there's an unused restroom by the main lobby, safe, monitored, and away from the equipment. You can keep your child there during your shifts until you find help." Clara stared at him, stunned. You're not firing me?" "You'll keep working," he replied, "as long as you follow safety protocol." His gaze softened slightly. "And make sure he gets medicine for that cough." For the first time in days, she exhaled. "Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say." "Then don't," Elias said simply, turning toward Rollins. "Draft a notice tonight. Effective immediately, employees with emergencies can request temporary accommodation through HR. No one should have to choose between work and their child." Rollins hesitated. "That's not standard procedure." Elias gave him a hard look. "Neither is firing a woman for being a mother." Rollins nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Elias left soon after, his steps echoing down the corridor. Clara watched him go, still gripping the edge of her cleaning cart. She felt the strange weight of relief and disbelief pressing against her ribs. She knelt beside Noah, brushing his hair back, whispering softly, "We're okay now, baby. Just for tonight, we're okay." Upstairs, in the dim hallway outside his office, Elias paused before the window that overlooked the factory floor. Rain had begun again, tracing faint rivers down the glass. He thought of his own mother, how she'd worked through nights like these too, with no one to stop her from being punished for trying. His reflection blurred with the storm outside. Maybe that was why he had stopped the firing. Maybe it was something deeper. All he knew was that when he'd seen the fear in Clara's eyes, he couldn't stay silent. Down below, the night shift carried on, the lights glowing soft and steady. For the first time in a long while, Elias felt the company he'd built breathe like something human again. A week after the confrontation with the supervisor, the plant seemed quieter. Word had spread among the night crew that Mr. Dorne himself had stepped in to defend a janitor. Some whispered admiration, others disbelief. But no one said it aloud when Clara passed by. She kept her head down, working as always, her hands quick and precise. She had been moved to clean the administrative floor, closer to the lobby, farther from danger. Each night, she left Noah sleeping in the newly reopened restroom, wrapped in the same blanket Elias had given them. Every so often, she'd peek through the small window, just to be sure he was still breathing evenly. It was late Thursday evening when the storm rolled in. Wind clawed at the windows, and thunder rumbled far across the river. Elias was still in his office, papers spread across the conference table, the lamp the only light in the room. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, trying to push away the exhaustion. The company had survived countless audits and expansions, but lately, something inside him felt misaligned, as if the gears that once made him unstoppable were grinding too hard. Downstairs, Clara finished wiping the glass doors and was about to empty the trash bins when the first flicker came. The ceiling lights dimmed, brightened, then went black. The steady hum of machines outside died in a low sigh. For a moment, the whole building seemed to hold its breath. Then came the sound of rain hammering the roof, louder than before. Clara fumbled for her phone and turned on the flashlight. Backup power should have kicked in, she murmured to herself. She remembered the emergency protocol. Stay calm, wait for the generator. But it wasn't starting. Somewhere above, a door opened and closed. Footsteps echoed faintly through the hallway. "Hello?" she called. The beam of her light caught a shadow moving at the far end of the corridor. It was Elias, his own phone flashlight casting another narrow glow. "Are you all right?" he asked, voice steady but low. "Yes," she said, relieved. "It's the backup generator. It didn't engage." "I know. I'm checking the main switch. Power grid's unstable with this storm." Lightning flared outside, illuminating the hallway for a split second. Clara blinked, then laughed nervously. "I guess there's no use cleaning in the dark." Elias managed a small smile. "You'd probably still do it." "Maybe," she admitted. "It's easier than thinking." He looked at her curiously. Thinking about what? Everything I can't fix, she said simply. He didn't press further. They walked together toward the break room, the only place with windows that faced the street. It was faintly lit by the glow of passing headlights. Clara set her cleaning cloth aside and took a small container from her cart. Cookies, she said, a little shyly. They're not fancy, but they stay soft for hours. You baked them? Yes, I used to before. She trailed off, shrugging. Before life got expensive. Elias accepted one and took a bite. The taste surprised him. Cinnamon, brown sugar, something warm that didn't belong in a sterile office. You undersold them, he said. She smiled faintly. They're better with milk. The rain eased for a moment, leaving only the tick of water dripping from the eaves. Clara sat across from him, elbows on the table, the flashlight between them. You knew exactly what to say that night, she said quietly. When you stopped the supervisor from firing me. Elias looked down at the cookie in his hand. It wasn't kindness, just fairness. Fairness doesn't usually look like that, she said. Most people would have agreed with him. He hesitated, then spoke. My mother worked in a factory too. She died when I was 17. Faulty wiring. It was my first job. My first design mistake. Clara's breath caught. You built the system? An early version, he said. I learned that safety reports are only numbers until someone dies because of them. She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. The emergency lights flickered briefly, then went dark again. You studied engineering, he said after a while, surprising her. Didn't you? I did, she said softly. 3 years. I was close to finishing. Then I got pregnant, and everything changed. No degree means no license. I cleaned hotel bathrooms until I could walk again. Do you regret it? She thought for a moment. Sometimes, but then I see Noah, and I don't. I just wish I could have shown him I was something before I became a mother. Elias leaned back, watching the faint light dance on her face. You still can, he said. You're sharper than most people I've hired. Clara laughed quietly. That's not saying much, coming from the boss. He raised an eyebrow. You knew? I cleaned your office, Mr. Dorne, she said gently. Your name's on the wall. For a second, he looked genuinely startled. Then a faint smile touched his lips. I see. Don't worry, she added. I won't tell anyone about the CEO who eats cookies in the dark. The backup lights finally hummed to life, washing the room in a soft, amber glow. They both blinked against it. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper. For a brief, quiet moment, it felt as if the world had stopped spinning. Elias glanced at her again, and she met his gaze. Neither spoke. Somewhere nearby, the sound of Noah's soft breathing came from the restroom through the half-open door. The storm had passed, but something else had quietly begun between them. Something fragile, human, and real. The morning after the storm, the air around the factory smelled of rain and iron. Puddles shimmered like mirrors on the concrete lot, and the workers moved slower than usual, exhausted from the long night. Clara arrived earlier than most. Noah was finally recovering from his cold, and she had left him with her neighbor for the day. She wanted to get ahead on cleaning the basement storage rooms before the next shift began. Those rooms were always quiet, the hum of machinery fading into a deep, steady silence. She turned on the light and began mopping near the old supply shelves when her broom knocked against something wedged between a cabinet and the wall. A manila folder, dusty and slightly bent. Curious, she bent down, pulled it free, and brushed away the layer of grime. The label, smudged with fingerprints, read, Q1, Rejected Applications, Internal Use Only. Inside were neatly stacked resumes, reference letters, and interview reports. Every candidate had impressive qualifications, degrees, certifications, recommendations, but each page bore the same red-stamped phrase, "Failed to meet performance criteria." Clara frowned. She knew enough about hiring protocols to realize this was strange. No one failed before even reaching a second interview. Her instincts, the same that had made her double-check wiring and switches in her old lab days, kicked in. Something about it felt off. She gathered the folder, meaning to hand it to the front desk later. Just as she stood, Elias appeared at the far end of the hall, his expression tired but alert. "Ms. Wynn," he greeted, voice calm. "You're in early." "Yes, sir," she said, startled. "I found something behind the cabinet." She held out the folder. "It looks like old paperwork, but I thought someone should see it." He took it from her, glanced at the label, and frowned. "Who told you to clean this section?" "No one," she said. "I just like finishing the quiet areas first." Elias flipped through a few pages, his brows drawing tighter with each one. "These were rejected applicants," he murmured. "But the notes, they're inconsistent." Clara tilted her head. "Meaning?" "Meaning someone didn't want these people hired," he said, "and not for the reasons written here." He looked up at her. "Thank you for bringing this. I'll take care of it." "Was it something bad?" she asked, uncertain. Elias hesitated. "Possibly, but if it is, you may have just helped prevent it from getting worse." He walked away with the folder under his arm, his stride quickening. That night, in his office, Elias stayed long after everyone else had gone home. The more he read, the more uneasy he became. Several resumes belonged to engineers and safety auditors he had personally requested interviews for months earlier. People who had mysteriously withdrawn from the process. He called up the digital files. Half were missing. Others had been edited. Someone inside Human Resources had filtered out candidates and replaced their positions with names connected to an external recruiting firm. His gut twisted. This wasn't just sloppy management, it was fraud. At midnight, he checked the security footage from the basement. There she was, Clara, picking up the folder, pausing, and reading a few lines before setting it aside. No snooping, no stealing, just curiosity and a sense of rightness. He exhaled slowly. Of all the people in his company, it had to be her who found this. Later that night, he sat by the window, rain starting again in a light drizzle. He thought about the way she'd said, "I just like finishing the quiet areas first." It reminded him of himself, always cleaning up after others, trying to fix things no one noticed. The next morning, he summoned the head of security and the internal audit director. "Pull every hiring record from the last 2 quarters, he ordered. "Cross-check the sign-offs with legal." When they asked why, he placed the folder on the table. "Because we've been paying for people who never worked here." Over the next 24 hours, the truth unraveled like thread. The head of HR, Mr. Dalton, had partnered with an outside recruitment agency to redirect qualified candidates and pocket referral fees. The fraud stretched across multiple departments. By dawn, Elias had everything documented: signatures, timestamps, altered forms. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted but certain. He owed the discovery to a woman who wasn't even supposed to be near those files. That evening, as he walked through the hallway toward the main entrance, he saw Clara wiping down the glass door, her reflection flickering against the rain outside. She turned when he stopped behind her. "Mr. Dorne," she said softly, "did the papers mean anything?" "They meant everything," he replied. She looked puzzled, but he didn't explain further. "Thank you for noticing what others ignored," he added. "You may have just saved this company." Clara blinked, unsure if he was serious. "I only did what anyone would do." "No," Elias said quietly. "Most people would have left it there." For a long second, they simply looked at each other. Then he said, "I'll need your help tomorrow, at the board meeting." "Me?" she stammered. "But "You're the one who found it," he interrupted gently. "Your words will carry more weight than you think." The color drained from her face. "I've never spoken in front of people like that." "Then start with the truth," Elias said. "That's all they'll need to hear." He gave a faint nod and walked away, leaving her standing in the glow of the lobby lights, the mop still in her hand. For the first time, Clara felt the line between invisibility and importance blur, and it frightened her as much as it inspired her. The next morning, the sky over Ravenhill was the color of steel. Inside Dorntech's headquarters, the glass boardroom on the 18th floor buzzed with quiet tension. Executives shifted in their seats, their murmurs fading as Elias entered, his expression unreadable. Behind him, clutching a folder to her chest, walked Clara. She had traded her blue uniform for a plain white blouse and dark trousers. Her hands trembled slightly as she took a seat near the end of the table. She didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. Yet Elias had insisted. "Before we begin," he said, his voice cutting through the low hum of conversation, "there's something that requires our full attention." He nodded toward her. "Miss Wynn, please." Clara's heart pounded so loudly she thought it might drown out her words. She stood, unfolded the first page of her notes, and looked around. Dozens of eyes stared back, men and women in suits, the air-conditioned chill pressing down on her. "Last week," she began softly, "I found a folder in the basement storage. It contained a set of rejected job applications. At first I thought it was just old paperwork, but when I read them, something didn't make sense." Her voice wavered, but she steadied it. All the candidates were highly qualified. Some even had internal recommendations. Every form had the same rejection reason: failed to meet performance standards. But none of them had ever reached a second interview. A murmur rippled across the table. Clara laid the photocopies she had made onto the desk, one by one, her fingers brushing the paper edges. "These are just a few of them. They were all signed off by the same HR representative." She took a breath. "Mr. Dalton." Heads turned. The man in question, the company's long-standing head of human resources, shifted in his chair. He forced a tight smile. "Miss Wynn isn't familiar with our internal procedures," he said smoothly. "These records don't reflect the entire context. She must have misunderstood." "She didn't misunderstand," Elias interrupted, his voice low but firm. He reached for a document at his end of the table. "We've verified the signatures. They don't match yours, Mr. Dalton." Dalton blinked. "Excuse me?" "They were forged," Elias continued. "We also traced payment transactions between Dorntech's training division and a private recruitment firm, one that happens to share a bank account with your cousin." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Dalton's mouth opened, then shut again. "Are you accusing me of fraud?" "I'm presenting facts," Elias said. He rose from his seat, his gaze steady. "This company was built on safety, honesty, and trust. If any one of those fails, everything we do loses meaning." He looked around the table. "We can't call ourselves innovators if we're corrupt inside." Clara stood still, not daring to move. The room felt electric, the air thick with shame and disbelief. Elias continued, his tone softening slightly. "Miss Wynn could have ignored what she found. She could have kept quiet, as most people would. Instead, she spoke up, risking her job, her security, her peace." He turned to her then, and their eyes met. "That kind of integrity doesn't belong in a janitor's closet. It belongs here, at this table." For a long moment, no one said anything. Then the CFO cleared his throat. "Mr. Dalton," he said, "your access to company systems is revoked, effective immediately. Legal will proceed from here." Dalton pushed back his chair, pale and defeated, and left without a word. Elias faced the rest of the board. "From this day forward, Dorntech will establish a full audit of our hiring practices and implement transparency across all departments. No more hidden filters. No more favoritism. We owe it to everyone who believes in this company. The room was silent again, but this time with agreement rather than fear. Slowly, one by one, the executives nodded. Clara exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Her knees felt weak, but Elias gave a subtle nod, and she sat down. When the meeting ended, people left in hushed groups, avoiding eye contact with her. She didn't mind. As she gathered her papers, Elias approached. "You handled that better than half the board," he said quietly. "My hands were shaking," she admitted with a nervous laugh. "Then you did it right," he replied. "The truth should make you shake." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Why did you make me do this? You could have presented it yourself." "Because your voice mattered more," he said. "They've heard enough of mine." Later, when she returned to the lobby, Vince the guard waved at her from the front desk. "Saw you on the live feed," he said with a grin. "You looked like you owned the place." Clara blushed. "Not even close." "Well," he said, tapping the badge clipped to her pocket, "looks like you do now." She glanced down. It wasn't her usual visitor's tag. It was an official employee badge, laminated and embossed with the Dorne Tech emblem. "He said to give you this," Vince added. "Said it was overdue." She turned the badge over. Beneath her name were two new words: Internal Quality and Safety Oversight. For a second, she just stared, unable to breathe. When she finally looked up, the elevator doors had already closed behind Elias. A year passed, and the storms over Ravenhill felt softer now, less cruel. The air outside the new Dorne Tech research wing carried the smell of fresh paint and sea wind. Workers were stringing lights across the garden for the evening celebration. The opening of the company's first Family First initiative, complete with an on-site childcare center and a training lab for single parents returning to work. Clara walked through the garden with a clipboard in one hand and a paper cup of lemonade in the other. Her white blouse was rolled at the sleeves, her hair tied up loosely as always. Around her, the staff she had once cleaned up after now called her Ms. Wynn with respect. Her title, Internal Quality and Safety Oversight, still sounded foreign to her, but she had grown into it. She didn't spend her nights mopping floors anymore, yet she never forgot how they felt under her hands. A child's laugh drew her attention. Across the courtyard, Noah was running between rows of chairs, chasing a balloon that had slipped free of its ribbon. He was bigger now, surer on his feet, wearing the same curious grin that once got them through the darkest nights. She smiled and waved him over, but before he could reach her, another hand caught the balloon first. Elias Dorne, in his dark gray suit, crouched down and tied the string back onto Noah's wrist. "We meet again, young man," he said. Noah giggled. "Mom says you're the boss of everything." "Only on paper," Elias replied with a faint smile, then glanced up at Clara. "He's growing fast." "Too fast," she said. "I blink and he's taller." He handed her a small silver object. "We had these made for the founding team." It was a watch, simple, elegant, engraved on the back. "To those who stay when it rains." Her breath caught. "You didn't have to." "You earned it," he interrupted gently. "You changed more than you think." Clara turned the watch over in her hand, tracing the engraving. "You changed too," she said. He looked toward the childcare center, where a group of toddlers played under a sunlit awning. "I had good teachers," he said quietly. The ribbon-cutting ceremony began soon after. Reporters gathered near the entrance, cameras flashing. Elias gave a short speech about transparency, fairness, and community, his voice steady but warm. When he mentioned the Family First initiative, he looked toward Clara in the crowd without naming her. She understood what he meant. After the applause faded and the crowd dispersed, the evening softened into a golden calm. The last of the guests drifted home, leaving the garden lit only by strings of fairy lights. Clara stood by the old fountain, holding Noah's hand, as he tried to catch his reflection in the rippling water. Elias joined them quietly. "You're still here," he said. "Old habits," she answered with a small smile. "Someone has to make sure the lights are turned off." "You don't have to anymore," he said, watching her reflection shimmer beside his. "You built this place. Let it take care of itself once in a while." She looked around, the laughter lingering in the air, the warm glow spilling from the childcare windows, the hum of a company that finally felt alive. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "Every time it rains," he said. "I still see you under that awning." "And you still stopped," she murmured. "Most people wouldn't have." "Maybe I was trying to stop something in myself," he admitted. "Or start something new." A soft breeze passed, carrying the faint smell of wet grass and cinnamon from the refreshment table. Noah tugged at Clara's sleeve. "Mom, can we go see the lights by the bridge?" She nodded, but Elias spoke first. "Let me show you something." He led them toward the glass walkway that connected the new wing to the old factory. From there, the city stretched out below, washed in evening silver. Rain had begun again, light and harmless. Elias pulled a small umbrella from his pocket, the same black one from that night long ago. He opened it above them. "Still works," he said. Clara laughed softly. "You kept it." "I keep things that matter." They stood under it together, the sound of rain tapping gently overhead. Noah pressed his face to the glass railing, whispering, "It's like the sky's full of stars." Elias looked down at the boy, then at Clara. "He's right," he said. "It's beautiful when you stop running from the storm." She turned toward him, her eyes warm. "You're not so cold anymore." "No," he said. "You taught me what warmth looks like." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Noah's small hand slipped into Elias's, unprompted, natural. The three of them stood there in quiet peace. The man who once built walls around himself, the woman who never stopped fighting for a safe place, and the child who had been the bridge between their worlds. Beyond the glass, lightning flickered faintly on the horizon, but it no longer frightened them. Inside the building, a plaque gleamed under the lights. "Family First, where work begins with home." Clara looked up at it, tears bright in her eyes. "You really built it," she whispered. "No," Elias said softly, tightening his grip on the umbrella handle. "We did." If this story touched your heart, remember, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can rebuild a life, a home, even a heart that's gone cold. Like, share, and subscribe to Midus Stories for more tales of hope, quiet strength, and love that begins in the rain.